Hey everyone, it's your boy Abdul with another financial video for you guys to enjoy today. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about investing for beginners. I'm going to give you some tools and tricks and tips in order for you to be able to invest the right way. Now, everybody talks about investing in the stock market and earning passive income. But if you have been struggling to build your portfolio, actually invest the right way, and you've been losing money, and you actually haven't seen any passive income from your investments, it could be because you're making these mistakes that a lot of people make when they start investing for the first time. And also, people that have been investing for a while, they also make this mistake. This video is going to be for you. My name is Abdul, and I've worked in the financial industry as an investment advisor for some of the top asset management companies in the world, like Vanguard. My channel is dedicated to teaching you and educating you on personal finance, money management, and investing. So, thank you for watching. Let's get to it. In this video, I'm going to show you the 4 keys to investing and how I use this approach in building investment portfolios for my clients when I worked at Vanguard. Now, a lot of people don't know about this approach, but once you learn about the approach, trust me when I say investing is going to be so much easier for you. And guess what? You don't have to be an expert. If you stay till the end, I'm going to show you 4 investment funds that I used to build portfolios, and trust me when I say you can use them too. So, what are some of the big mistakes people do when they start investing? Well, number one, they chase after high returns. Now, this greatly impacts your wealth accumulation over time in your investment portfolios because most of the times you actually make mistakes when you chase after high returns. Another is building their investment portfolio not with a goal in mind, but instead choosing stocks that they heard about or their friends or, told them that, hey, this is a good stock to invest in, instead of actually building an investment portfolio around your goals. Another thing is not diversifying their investments. In other words, people just choose stocks that, sound sexy and they have a good name to them. And on top of that, you hear about them on the news. And so next thing you know, you're actually investing in stocks that are pretty much in a similar industry, which prevents you from actually properly diversifying your investments. Another thing is trying to time the market. This is a bad idea, and a lot of people try to do it, and it always turns out bad. So, with those mistakes, let me teach you the proper approach to take when investing so that you can avoid making these mistakes. So, what are the 4 keys to investing? The first is setting an investment goal. Second, having a proper asset allocation. The third, being properly diversified within your portfolio. The last one, but not least, is considering the investment costs. Now, I'm going to go through each of these 4 keys to investing, and at the end, you're going to be able to build and know how to construct a proper investment portfolio for your investment goals. So, let's start with the first key: investing with a goal in mind. In wealth management, there's a term called goal-based investing. It's an investment approach that a lot of wealth managers actually use. Now, this approach differs from your traditional investing in this way. The approach takes a look at what your investment goals are and focuses on how well you can actually meet your personal financial goals, rather than looking at how well your investments perform in the market against the overall benchmarks. When you invest with the goal-based approach, you're putting together an investment strategy that looks to see if it can achieve the particular goal you are trying to reach. And your metrics are aligned in such a way where you're looking at whether the outcome of your investment approach is actually helping you reach your investment goals, instead of looking at it from the perspective of, well, how much money did I make this year? And did I do better than the stock market? Because that approach is actually what a lot of people did in 2008 and 2009, and they got wiped out because a lot of their portfolios that they had or the investment approach that they used was based on just pure growth, pure investing in stocks without the consideration of having a well balanced approach to achieve a particular goal. When I worked at Vanguard, that is the approach that we actually use. We took our clients through the process of establishing their investment goals before even building their portfolio. So, how do you set investment goals? Well, let me show you how. Now, the first question you have to ask yourself is, what am I investing for? Is it to buy a house? Is it to build wealth? Is it to generate income? Is it to save enough money to be able to use as my seed capital for my new investment venture or business venture? Whatever it may be, got to start with the end in mind. So, how do you create a proper investment goal? Well, there's 5 components you're going to need to have in order to build a proper investment goal. Here are the 5 components. It has to be specific, it has to be measurable, it has to be achievable, it has to be relevant, and it has to be time bound. Now, I'm sure you heard the acronym SMART, and that's exactly what you're doing. You're creating a SMART investment goal. So let's dive into the first component, having a specific goal. Instead of having a general goal of saving money, specify what you're saving for and how much you want to save. For example, I'm saving for an emergency savings fund and I want to save $2,000. That's being specific. You're saving for emergency savings fund and you're saving for the amount of $2,000. It's very specific. Now let's move on to the second component, making your goal measurable. Make your goal a set dollar amount. This way you can check on a regular basis whether you're getting close to achieving that particular dollar amount. The third component is making the goal actually achievable. Consider your financial situation and resources that you have to work towards this goal. A lot of times, individuals invest in the stock market or they put their money, hard earned money, into the stock market, not realizing that they actually may need that money sooner than they thought, not assessing how much money that they can actually would stand to lose or how much money they can actually put away into their investments without actually needing it. Because the last thing you want to do is invest in the stock market, and the next thing you know, the money that you invested, you actually needed for an actual emergency, therefore putting yourself in a big financial position that is bad and detrimental for your finances. So the best thing you can do is assess your financial situation so that you are put in a position where you're not stressed out if your stock position goes down or your investment position goes down. Now, the next component is make it relevant. Ensure that your goal is important to you and aligned with your other financial priorities. Make it relevant to you. Don't just make a financial goal just to make a financial goal, because at that point, then guess what? You're not gonna work towards it because it's not really meaningful to you. So you gotta make it meaningful. You gotta make it relevant in order for you to have that anchor to work towards that goal and to overcome the obstacles that may come in you reaching that goal. Now, the fifth and last one is make it time bound. This is so important when it comes to building an investment plan and or actually building an investment goal. You need to make your goal time bound. The reason being is because you have to have a time frame as to when you're going to be reaching a goal. So you want to make sure that you're making the right steps in your personal finance and saving the right amount of money to be able to reach that particular goal. So the target date has to be clear. I want to save $5,000 by the end of the year. That is clear. You have the amount and you know when you're going to need it. You're going to need it by the end of the year. So you have a set target date. This helps prevent you from basically using that money that you need at the end of the year for an immediate need when you don't necessarily really need to, right? Because you don't have a target amount as or a target date as to when you want to achieve this goal. Next thing you know, something comes up and it's like, well, I can take the money out because I really don't need to achieve that particular goal at this time, right? So therefore, you're actually hindering yourself from achieving that particular goal because you have not set a target date. Now, those are the components needed in order to build a proper investment goal. Now, the next key that I'm going to go over with you is asset allocation. So before we begin, we need to define what an investment portfolio actually is. An investment portfolio is a collection of investments held by an individual or an institution, and within this portfolio are different asset classes. Now, this could be a stock, bond, cash, or cash equivalent, or real estate. The goal of an investment portfolio is to generate income and growth over time. So, when you're building your investment portfolio and you've set the goal target, you have to have the proper asset allocation. Now, your asset allocation is how investors divide their portfolio amongst different asset classes, like your stocks, your bonds, your real estate, and your cash, a cash equivalent. Now, in your portfolio, the asset classes actually play a role in how risky your positions are, and also whether your position is built for growth, is built for generating income, or is built for asset preservation based on the different assets that you have within your account. So, for example, let's say that you're building a short term financial goal. The asset classes within that financial goal is going to look different than the assets in a long term financial goal. For example, a short term financial goal could be building, or a short term financial goal could be saving for a home or a down payment. The asset classes within that investment goal would look like this. You probably would have a little bit more bonds than you would stocks. And on top of that, a good portion of it would be probably in cash. Reason why is because you want to preserve your principal as much as possible. But you're going to have a little bit of stocks depending on the time horizon. Once again, time is a key factor. Depending on the time horizon of your goal, you may expose yourself just to a little bit of stocks just to have that gain. But your position is mainly to generate some interest in your portfolio while still contributing a good amount in order to build up that principal amount that you're going to need in order for the down payment. Now, a long-term financial goal, your asset allocation mix would look completely different because you have a long-term time horizon. Your exposure to certain asset classes may be more than others. For example, a long-term financial goal may be retirement. Well, in this case here, you're not going to need that money anytime soon. Maybe this money you're going to need 30, 20 years down the road. So you have a long time horizon in order to expose yourself to asset classes such as stocks that are more volatile, more risky, but provide you with the opportunity to have a higher gain over time, and also your portfolio will grow over time. Now, this asset class also may include bonds within that long term investment approach. Now, the bonds may be there just to provide some cushion if there's market volatility, but a lot of your position might be exposed to equities, stocks. So that is the breakdown of asset allocation, right? You have the different asset classes within your investment portfolio, such as your stocks, your bonds, your cash or cash equivalent, or real estate. That makes up your investment portfolio. Now, the next key to investing, which is the third key, is investing with diversification in mind. So having a diversified investment portfolio. That's what we're going to talk about next. Now, what does diversification do to your investment portfolio? Diversification helps lower your overall investment risk by tapping into the concept called correlation. Correlation is used to show how different investments move compared with one another. When you combine investments that don't move in the same way, your portfolio has a lower correlation, which means you're more protected against extreme market downturns. So, here's how it works in action. When you have your stock position fall, what tends to happen is your bond position starts to actually go up in value. Now, that's not the case all the time, but what this allows you to do is reduce the big market swings in your portfolio, which means that the value change in your portfolio isn't that astronomical as it would be if you had investments with the same correlation. For example, if you had stocks and the stocks were in one sector, let's say stocks were in tech and techs took a bad hit, guess what? Your overall investment value would start to tank because all of your money is positioned in stocks that are in the tech sector. Make sense? All right, let's move on to the next section. So, how does diversification look within your portfolio? Diversification actually applies to both your stocks and bonds position within your portfolio. On the stock side, it means that you're owning shares of US and also international stocks because a lot of people forget about the international market. A lot of people think about investing in the US stock market, which in the industry we call like home bias, and not actually looking at, well, what other investments can I make outside of the US, right? That's one thing that a lot of people don't think about. So you have your international companies and also different sizes and also in different sectors. Now, on the bond side, you have your corporate bonds, your government bonds, and also your municipal bonds that you can actually invest in. Now, this breakdown is what you're looking at when you have a true diversified portfolio. Now, having a balance of low risk assets like bonds and high risk assets like stocks allows your portfolio to grow while providing a cushion against volatility. Now, of course, this does come with a downside, and the downside is you are going to leave some growth and return on the table. And the reason being is because, of course, you have exposure to not just stocks, but also bonds. And at times when stocks are doing well, sometimes bonds are not doing well. But that is okay. And the reason being is because if you're going to position yourself to chase after high returns, you're going to find yourself in a position that you don't want to be in, losing money in the stock market and also making decisions that are actually detrimental to your long term wealth accumulation. But if you take this balanced approach that is strategic, that has the end goal in mind, which is your particular financial goal that you've set for yourself, you're going to actually see progress and also you're going to see good returns in your portfolio that align with the goal that you're trying to accomplish. So, I've shared with you how diversification works, but how can you actually implement it in your own investment portfolio? Now, I know you're not probably going to be researching different stocks, different companies, in the US and also international stocks as well and buying into them and also looking at the different sizes of the company, whether it be a large cap, small cap, mid cap, you're not going to be doing that because honestly, you just don't have the time to, which is definitely understandable. So, I'm going to show you the simplest way and simplest approach you can take in actually diversifying your portfolio without having to do all that research and legwork. Let me show you how. In order to have a truly diversified portfolio, this involves owning stocks from various industries, countries, and risk profiles. It also involves owning assets that are beyond just equities, such as bonds, commodities, real estate, whose performance are not in sync with the stock during different market environments. Now, that's a lot to actually do. To do that kind of research, to look into different companies and to look at different bonds and different bond classes and your municipal bond, your government bond, all of that takes a lot of work. It does. And there is a better approach to actually do it. And that is by looking at different asset funds or asset allocation funds. This actually allows you to get the diversification you're looking for without having to actually build the investment portfolio from scratch. Now, you can take that approach and that does take time, but you can really take a shortcut, which I actually encourage you to do because look, your life is very busy. You don't have time to sit there in front of your computer researching stocks and looking at different markets, looking at it's a lot of work, right? I wouldn't encourage you to do so. But what I would encourage you to do is at least have the basic understanding of how a portfolio works. Because once you have that, then when you're choosing these asset allocation funds, you have an understanding of how they work, which benefits you in the long run. So, what are some of the asset allocation funds that you can actually buy into? Now, the thing is, you actually probably own some of these. Now, for example, if you own a 401k with your employer, you most likely have some kind of asset allocation fund within that 401k. Now, a good example of this is a target date fund. Now, this fund is designed to help investors save for retirement, and this approach sets up an automatic adjustment to their assets over time, becoming more conservative as you get closer to your retirement. Now, this is automatically done for you and you don't have to think about it. That's why target date funds are really, really great when it comes to saving for retirement. Now, another kind of fund that you can actually use is called a balance fund. This approach typically invests in a mix of stocks and bonds with a focus on income and capital appreciation. That's what a balance fund actually does. Now, a growth fund probably tell within the name that the investment approach is in primarily stocks and also its goal is to generate capital appreciation as quick as it can. Now, that approach means that you're taking more risk in the market because you want your portfolio to grow. Now, income fund, from the name, you can probably determine that is there to generate income, right? So, an income fund invest in income generating assets. So, when you hear people saying, how can I generate income from the stock market or generate passive income? You can actually do that by owning an income fund. Why? Because you're going to be generating income from the assets that you own within that fund. So, that's how you can easily build an investment portfolio without having to actually build it yourself. You could just buy into one of these funds and you're all set, pretty much good to go. But there's another factor you have to consider when it comes to diversification if you want to take the route of either building yourself or buying into various different funds. And that is, you don't want to over diversify. Yes, it's possible for you to actually over diversify. And this is how you end up actually over diversifying. Let's say you buy into two funds. Now, these two funds are actually allocated towards equities, right? And they're mostly exposed in equities that are in the US stock market. Well, if you own two funds that do the exact same thing, you have actually overlapped, which means that you have not decreased your exposure, you've increased your exposure to more market volatility than necessary. Not only that, you actually increase your costs as well because these funds do cost, and that's the last segment I'm actually going to go over is the cost of the funds and how you want to consider the cost when you're actually investing in these particular funds. So that's one, over diversification. Now, another thing is ignoring the correlation. If you buy into funds that have the same correlation, then you kind of diminish that diversification that those funds provide because you now have two funds that have the same correlation, which means that if the market were to go down, both funds would do poorly. Now, the other thing you want to consider is rebalancing. Now, this concept basically, to explain it as simply as I can, is if you buy into or if you build an investment portfolio that has 70% in stocks and 30% in bonds, and you leave it for a certain time period, what's going to end up happening is that the equity position over time is going to grow. So now you may not have 70% in stocks. You may have, let's say, 75% or 80% over time. Rebalancing basically means that you're selling high, you're selling the stock position, bringing it back to a 70% position, and using those proceeds to buy into the bond position, right? Selling or buying, selling high, buying low. That's the process. That's pretty much what rebalancing is. And now with rebalancing, you have to be disciplined to actually do so. And you also have to have a target range as to when you will rebalance. Let's say your portfolio deviates by 15%. That is a signal for you to start selling your growth position that or selling some of the growth that you've made and buying into the lower position that you have so that you can stick to the target allocation that you've set. And the reason being is because let's say if you just let the portfolio just run and do its thing without rebalancing, well, then at that point, it defeats the whole purpose of having a balanced portfolio in the first place. And you open yourself to having a higher risk in your investment position for a particular goal when you necessarily don't need to. So that is what rebalancing does. Now that we've gone through how to have a proper asset allocation, how to properly diversify your portfolio, and how to properly set financial goals, now let's talk about the final key component, which is cost. It's important to factor in the cost when it comes to investing. And the reason being is without factoring the cost in whichever investment funds that you choose, a lot of your gains can actually be eaten up by the cost of that particular fund. Now, here's a chart that shows you over time what that cost would do if you did not factor in the cost in your portfolio. For example, here is an investment of $100,000 over 20 years. And as you can see, if you have a standard return or basic return of 4%, you can see what the different costs actually does to your portfolio. For example, if you invested $100,000 in 20 years, you have a 4% return, and you have a 1% annual fee, your portfolio could do much poorly than the individual that had a 4% return, still had investment, started invest their investment amount at 100,000, and the investment time horizon was 20 years, but their internal cost was just 0.25%. You can see that they had the highest growth in their portfolio. So I hope this drives the need for you to factor in the cost if you were to choose a fund. Now, I told you towards the end of the video, I was going to share with you 4 funds that I use when building portfolios. And these funds you can actually buy into as well. Now, one thing I like about these funds is their low cost. Now, this approach is if you wanted to build an investment portfolio yourself, but you didn't want to go through choosing individual stocks, you could still use this fund and still have a proper asset allocation utilizing these funds. So here are the 4 funds that I use: Vanguard Total Stock Market ETF, Vanguard Total International Stock ETF, Vanguard Total Bond Market ETF, and Vanguard Total International Bond ETF. Now, you can use these 4 funds to build a simple investment portfolio that provides you with the diversification and also a good exposure between the 2 different asset classes, your stocks and your bonds. Now, let me give you an example of a breakdown utilizing these ETFs. So let's say that you just started a new job and you're getting paid pretty well, and you want to start saving for your first home, and you have $2,000 to start with, and you want to build a portfolio that is aligned with achieving the particular goal of saving for a down payment. The goal amount, let's say, was the goal amount to save was $20,000, and you just gave yourself a time horizon of, let's say, 5 years to do so. Now, the portfolio breakdown could look like this. With $2,000, you can build, let's say, a moderate portfolio, buying 70% in stocks, 30% in bonds. So you would essentially buy, let's say, $1,400 of Vanguard Total Market ETF and $6,000 of Vanguard Total Bond Market ETF. Done. Low cost, no brainer, done, just like that. And all you have to do is make sure you're rebalancing on a periodic basis, whether it be a quarterly basis or annual basis, depending on how much the 2 positions deviate from the target amount that you set for yourself. Maybe the target amount was 10%. That's how easy it is. It's a no-brainer. This process provides you with the diversification and also a low-cost approach, and it's stress-free. You don't have to think about it, right? You don't have to. The only thing you have to do is contribute consistently within those positions. And that is it. This process that I just broke down to you, if followed, will save you time and save you money and save you a lot of sleepless nights, because it's a no-brainer process. And yes, this is a process that I used when I worked at Vanguard, and trust me, it made my client's life so much easier. So there you have it, my process in building a proper investment portfolio. Now, I hope you learned something today. And if you have any questions about a various financial concept or investment concept that I shared with you today, please feel free to comment in the comment section. And if you want me to make a more in-depth video about a various different financial topic, just let me know and I'll gladly do so. That's it, folks. Thank you for learning with me.